Her fury ignited at the sight of the red MAGA hat, and Karen snatched it off the man's head, humiliating him in front of the crowd. But she didn't know that standing before her was a powerful judge, capable of turning her outburst into a major scandal. What happened next changed everything. John Miller, a lean man in his 40s with short chestnut hair, confidently stepped into a small cafe in the heart of Manhattan. He wore a dark blue jacket and neat jeans, but the bright red "Make America Great Again" hat perched on his head instantly caught everyone's attention. He approached the counter, ready to place his order, when the room suddenly grew quieter. A few patrons shot him disapproving glances, as though he had just broken some unspoken rule of etiquette. Among those visibly annoyed was Karen. She was a stocky woman in her 50s, dressed in a baggy gray sweater and tight black leggings that did her figure no favors. Her short, light blonde hair barely covered her ears, and her face, twisted in a scornful grimace, seemed to demand confrontation. She let out a loud, exaggerated scoff, as though unable to contain her indignation, and announced to the room, "Oh, God, another fanatic. How can anyone wear that?" Her sarcastic remark earned chuckles from a couple of young people at a nearby table. John, however, merely turned to face Karen, tilting his head slightly. A faint, almost ironic smile crossed his lips. "Good morning. Looks like you're off to an energetic start," he replied in a friendly tone that only seemed to further infuriate Karen. She noisily pushed her chair back, making sure everyone noticed her, and stood up with determination. "What a disgrace to walk around in that," she snapped, pointing at John's hat. "It's a symbol of hate and intolerance." John nodded slowly, maintaining eye contact with her. At that moment, someone in the cafe pulled out their phone to record the interaction. Others quickly followed, eager to capture what was bound to escalate. "I'm sorry you see it that way," John said, his voice calm and measured. "But I'm not sure discussing my hat is the best way to start your day." His words drew a light chuckle from a man sitting by the window, but Karen wasn't about to back down. She stepped toward John with a fiery determination, as though she had taken it upon herself to rid the world of what she deemed a symbol of hate. The cameras tracked her every move, and the room fell silent, waiting to see how this confrontation would unfold. Karen approached John until only inches separated them. Her face was flushed, her nostrils flared, and her hands trembled with anger. Without a moment's hesitation, she reached up and yanked the red hat off his head. "This is where you belong," she barked, hurling the hat to the floor as if it were garbage. For a moment, the cafe was enveloped in a heavy silence. Even the hum of the espresso machine seemed to pause. Phones continued to record, capturing every detail. John, unhurried, bent down, picked up the hat, and brushed off an invisible speck of dust. "Do you always express your opinions this way, ma'am?" he asked, his voice steady and his faint smile intact. He placed the hat back on his head as if nothing had happened. Karen felt her anger surge even further. His composure, his self-assuredness. It was infuriating. "You have no idea how much people hate people like you," she screamed, grabbing a glass of water from a nearby table. In a dramatic gesture, she flung its contents toward John. The water splashed onto his jacket, leaving dark patches. The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "Wow, she really did that?" But John merely brushed the water off his sleeve and looked at Karen with the same calm expression. "It seems you've just committed assault," he said, matter-of-factly. "But fortunately, I'm a patient man." The murmurs in the room grew louder. Some patrons began to whisper that Karen had gone too far. A woman seated in the corner called out indignantly, "Hey, he hasn't done anything wrong." Karen bit her lip, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control. But it was too late to back down now. Every eye in the cafe was locked on her and John, and the tension in the air was almost tangible. Karen had just drawn in a deep breath, ready to unleash another tirade, but John interrupted her. With unhurried precision, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small business card. Its crisp white edge glinted under the cafe lights, instantly capturing the attention of everyone present. Maintaining his calm demeanor, he extended the card to Karen, his faint, unshakable smile unwavering. Karen hesitated, her hands trembling as she took the card. The cafe had fallen silent, save for the faint sound of phones recording every moment. She lowered her eyes to the card, scanning its text. Her face froze. Slowly, her expression shifted from indignation to confusion, then to utter disbelief. Her eyes widened, and her jaw slackened as the realization struck her like a thunderclap. "Judge John Miller?" she stammered, her voice trembling. Her complexion turned an ashen gray, as though the ground beneath her had given way. The room erupted into whispers. Someone from the back of the cafe exclaimed, "Wait, is that the Judge Miller? The one from all those high-profile cases? They show him on TV all the time." The hum of excitement rippled through the room, and all eyes turned to Karen, whose defiant posture now crumbled under the weight of collective judgment. She darted her gaze between John, calm and composed, and the gathering crowd, whose expressions were now equal parts amusement and pity. I didn't know," Karen muttered weakly, her voice faltering as she tried to find an explanation. John raised a hand to gently stop her. "You didn't know people have the right to wear hats? Or you didn't know that attacking someone over their beliefs could land you in court?" His tone was steady, but a subtle note of irony colored his words. The crowd chuckled, some openly laughing. Karen opened her mouth to respond, but failed to produce any coherent words. She looked utterly deflated. John, still wearing his signature composed smile, tucked the business card back into his pocket with a deliberate motion. Without another word, he turned toward the counter to order his coffee, leaving Karen standing there, exposed and humiliated. A week later, Karen walked into a courtroom dressed in a stiff, dark navy pantsuit that looked painfully unnatural on her. She appeared subdued and embarrassed, her shoulders slumped and her eyes avoiding the swarm of cameras waiting for her outside. The crowd of journalists and onlookers buzzed with anticipation. The video of her outburst at the cafe had gone viral, amassing millions of views. Seated at the defendant's table, Karen attempted to defend herself, insisting that she had merely been expressing her opinion. But the smartphone footage from the cafe patrons told a different story. Clips showing her yanking John's hat off his head and dousing him with water played on a large screen in the courtroom, eliciting murmurs of disapproval from the audience. The judge, an older man with silver hair and a sharp, sly smile, occasionally glanced at Karen with a look of thinly veiled sarcasm. "Mrs. Karen," he began, his tone tinged with irony, "your behavior was not only disrespectful but also unlawful. Therefore, I am sentencing you to a $500 fine and mandatory public apologies to Mr. Miller." Karen's face flushed a deep crimson, brighter than John's infamous red hat. She tried to protest, but the judge's stern glare silenced her. Rising from her seat, Karen prepared to deliver her apology. Her voice quivered as she spoke, barely audible over the murmurs of the courtroom. I'm sorry that I didn't show proper respect," she stammered, her words thick with humiliation as the spectators watched intently. Standing a few feet away, John nodded politely, his expression unchanged. After the session adjourned, reporters swarmed him outside the courthouse. With his trademark calm and a polite smile, John addressed the press. "I don't seek conflict," he said, "but it's important to remind everyone that respect for others' beliefs is a cornerstone of our society." The following day, the story dominated social media. Clips of Karen's courtroom apology and memes captioned "Karen versus the judge" spread like wildfire. One viral image featured her flustered face with the tagline, "When your opponent is a judge." Meanwhile, John quietly returned to his work, satisfied that another small victory for reason and civility had been achieved.